For thousands of years, long before there were books or clocks or crowded cities, the people of ancient India told stories to calm the restless human heart. They told them beside slow rivers, under banyan trees, in the blue hour before sleep. These are stories of gods and sages, of oceans churned into nectar, of boys who walk to the door of death without fear, and of a mind that can be quieted, no matter how loud the world becomes. You do not need to believe anything to receive them. You only need to listen. So take a slow breath in. Let it out even slower. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your jaw soften. Whatever you were carrying a moment ago can wait outside the door for a little while. Let these 10 stories move through you like warm water. Let them loosen what is tight. Let them remind you of something you already know deep down and have simply been too tired to remember. Story 1. The churning of the ocean. In the beginning of an age, the gods had grown weak. They had lost their strength, their light, their courage, and they were afraid. There was only one thing that could restore them: Amrita, the nectar of immortality. But the nectar did not sit on a shelf waiting to be taken. It lay at the very bottom of the ocean of milk, hidden beneath unimaginable depths. The gods could not reach it alone, so they did something that must have tasted strange to them. They went to the Asuras, their old rivals, and asked for help. And the Asuras, who wanted the nectar just as badly, agreed. Together they made a churn out of the world itself. They uprooted a great mountain and laid it on its side to be the churning rod. They asked the mighty serpent Vasuki to wind himself around the mountain to be the rope. The gods took hold of one end. The Asuras took hold of the other. And when the mountain began to sink into the seabed, the god Vishnu took the form of an enormous tortoise and slid beneath it, holding the whole weight of it on his back. Then they began to pull, back and forth, back and forth. The mountain spun in the deep water. They churned for years. They churned for ages. The ocean turned and thickened and roared. And what rose first from the water was not the nectar. What rose first was poison. A dark cloud came boiling up out of the sea, blue, black, and burning. A poison called halahala. It spread across the sky and turned the air bitter. Creatures fell where they stood. The gods dropped the rope and ran. The Asuras dropped the rope and ran. Everything that lived began to choke, and it seemed that the world would end before it had even finished being made. In their terror, they all ran to the same place. They ran to Shiva sitting in stillness on his mountain, and they begged him to save them. Shiva opened his eyes. He looked at the poison, and he did not flinch, and he did not hurry. He walked down to the shore of the churning ocean. He gathered the burning poison into the palm of his hand, the way you might gather rainwater, and he drank it. But he did not swallow it. He held it in his throat. He would not swallow it because the poison would have entered the world through him, and he would not spit it out because then it would have fallen on the earth and everything living would have died. So he simply held it, motionless, and let it burn where it was. The poison stained his throat a deep blue. And from that day he was called Neelkanth, the blue-throated one. It became not his shame, but his name, the mark by which he is loved. When the danger had passed, the gods and the Asuras came back to the shore. They picked up the rope. They began once again to churn, and now the ocean began to give up its treasures. The moon rose out of the water. A wish-granting tree came up, and a wish-granting cow. The goddess Lakshmi rose on a lotus, and the world filled with beauty and abundance. And at last, walking up out of the waves, came the divine physician carrying a pot in his hands, and in that pot was the nectar of immortality. The lesson: the churning of the ocean is one of the oldest and truest descriptions of the inner life that has ever been told. When you begin to work on yourself, when you start to meditate or to heal or to change something old and heavy, the first thing that comes up is never the nectar. It is the poison. It is the grief you had packed away, the anger you thought you were done with, the memory that arrives at 2 a.m. Almost everyone who begins this work stops here because they assume that if it hurts, they must be doing it wrong. They are not doing it wrong. This is simply what rises first. The nectar is real, but it is underneath. And notice what Shiva did with the poison, because this is the second half of the teaching. He did not swallow it, and he did not spit it out. He held it. To swallow the poison is to let a difficult feeling go all the way down into you and take over your body and become your identity. To spit it out is to throw it at the nearest person so that they have to carry what you did not want to feel. Shiva showed a third way, the hardest and the most peaceful way, which is simply to hold the feeling in the throat, to let it be there and burn for a while, without acting on it, without letting it own you, until it changes. That is what a calm person is doing when they seem calm. They are not empty. They are holding something quietly, and in time it does not destroy them. It becomes the deep blue mark by which they are known and loved. Story 2. The Two Birds on the Tree. A young student once came to an old sage who lived by a river. The student was clever and troubled, and he had a question that had been keeping him awake. "Teacher," he said, "I do not know who I am. Some days I am joyful and generous, and I think, this is me, this is my true nature. Then a small thing goes wrong, and within an hour I am bitter and frightened and cruel, and I think, no, this is me, and the other was pretending. Which one is really me? How can I be one person on Tuesday and another on Wednesday? I feel as though I am being blown around inside my own life." The sage did not answer for a while. He was looking up. "Come and sit beside me," he said, "and look at that tree." The student sat. It was a wide old tree, heavy with fruit, its branches moving a little in the wind, and in the tree there were two birds. "Watch the lower one," the sage said. The lower bird was busy. It hopped from branch to branch, restless, quick, always in motion. It tasted a fruit, and the fruit was sweet, and the bird lifted its head and sang and puffed itself up with pleasure. It hopped on and tasted another, and this one was sour, and the bird shook its feathers in distress and made a small unhappy sound. Then it found a sweet one again, and it was delighted again, then a bitter one, and it despaired again. It never rested. It went up and down with every fruit it touched, all day long, hungry, hopeful, disappointed, hopeful, again. "Now watch the other one," the sage said. Higher in the tree, on a still branch, the second bird sat perfectly quiet. It was calm and golden, and it ate nothing at all. It did not chase the fruit, and it did not judge the fruit. It simply watched the lower bird with a steady, patient attention, the way you might watch a child playing in a garden. It did not scold. It did not look away. When the lower bird sang, the golden bird watched. When the lower bird shook with misery, the golden bird went on watching, and its calm did not change. The student and the sage sat there for a long time. At last, the lower bird bit into a fruit that was so bitter that it stopped where it was, exhausted, unable to go on. And in that pause, for the first time all day, it looked up. It saw the golden bird, and something in it went quiet. It hopped up one branch, closer. The tossing and the hunger began to settle. It climbed closer still, and the nearer it came, the calmer it became, until at last it came to rest beside the golden bird, and found with astonishment that there had never been two birds at all. There had only ever been one, and it had been watching itself the whole time. The lesson. This story comes from the oldest teachings in India, and it is one of the most useful things a person with an anxious mind can hear. There is a part of you that eats the fruit. It reacts to everything. It rises when a message arrives and falls when the tone is wrong. It tastes each event as it comes, and it is thrown up and down all day, and it is exhausting to live as that bird alone. But there is also a part of you that watches. Right now, as you listen, something in you is aware that you are listening. That awareness is not anxious. It has never been anxious. It is watching the anxiety, the way the golden bird watches the lower one, without panic, without contempt, from a branch a little higher up. This is not a metaphor for someone else. It is available to you tonight, and the way in is very small. When you notice that you are afraid, try changing one word. Instead of thinking, "I am anxious," try thinking, "I notice anxiety is here." In the first sentence, you are the lower bird. In the second, you have moved up one branch. Nothing about your situation changes, and yet everything loosens, because you have remembered that you are not only the thing that suffers, you are also the quiet thing that sees. The golden bird is not far away, and it is not in the future, and you do not have to earn it. You just have to look up. Story 3. Arjuna and the Eye of the Bird. Long ago, in a kingdom of many princes, there lived a teacher named Drona. He was the greatest master of weapons in the world, and the young princes of the royal house were sent to him to be trained. Among them was Arjuna, who would one day become the finest archer who ever lived. But at this time, he was only a boy among boys, and no one yet knew what he would be. One morning, Drona took his students out to a field at the edge of the forest. He had set a wooden bird high in the branches of a tree, and it sat there among the leaves, small and distant. "Today," he said, "you will each take a shot at the bird's eye. Come forward one at a time, but before you shoot, I will ask you a question." The eldest prince came first. He fitted the arrow, drew the string back to his cheek, and held it there ready. "Tell me," said Drona, "what do you see?" "I see the bird, master," the prince said. "I see the tree it is sitting in. I see the branches and the green leaves moving. I see my brothers standing behind me, and I see you standing beside me, and above it all, I see the open sky." "Step aside," said Drona quietly. "Do not shoot." The prince lowered his bow, confused, and another took his place. Drona asked him the same question, and he answered much the same. He saw the tree, the leaves, the bird, the other princes, the morning light. "Step aside," said Drona. "Do not shoot." One by one they came, and one by one they were sent away without loosing a single arrow. The boys began to murmur among themselves, unsure what they had done wrong. Then Arjuna came forward. He raised the bow. He drew the string. He became very still. "Arjuna," said Drona, "tell me what you see." "I see the eye of the bird," said Arjuna. Drona waited a moment. "Do you see the tree?" "No, master." "Do you see the branches, the leaves? Do you see me standing here beside you?" "No, master, I see only the eye of the bird." And Drona smiled and said, "Shoot." The arrow left the string and crossed the field and struck the wooden bird exactly through the eye. The lesson: anxiety is very rarely a problem of danger. It is almost always a problem of attention. The anxious mind is not looking at one thing. It is looking at the tree and the leaves and the sky and the people watching and the version of tomorrow where everything goes wrong and the version of last year where it already did. It is holding 40 things at once and trying to solve all of them simultaneously, and no mind that has ever existed can do that. Notice that the other princes were not lazy or foolish. They were observant. They saw more than Arjuna did. That was exactly the problem. Their attention was spread out across everything, and attention spread thin has no power in it. What Arjuna had was not better eyesight. It was the ability to let almost everything go. And this is a skill, not a gift, which means you can practice it in very ordinary ways. Wash one cup and let it be only that cup, the temperature of the water, the weight of it in your hand. Walk to the corner of the street and let it be only the walking. Take one breath and let the whole of your attention rest inside that single breath. From the beginning of it to the end, you will find that a mind holding one thing feels utterly different from a mind holding 40. The world does not become smaller when you narrow your focus. It becomes quieter. Ask yourself right now, what is the eye of the bird for me today? Not everything, not the whole tree. One thing. Look at that and let the rest of the forest blur. Story 4. Krishna on the battlefield. On the morning of the greatest war in the world, two enormous armies faced each other across a wide plain. Conch shells were sounding, banners were snapping in the wind, and in a chariot at the front of one army stood Arjuna, the finest archer alive, the man who could see nothing but the eye of the bird. His charioteer was Krishna. "Take me out into the middle," Arjuna said. "I want to see the men I am about to fight." So Krishna drove the chariot forward and stopped it in the space between the two armies. And Arjuna looked, and in the ranks facing him, he saw his cousins. He saw uncles who had lifted him onto their shoulders when he was small. He saw the old teacher who had taught him to hold a bow. He saw the faces of people he had loved his whole life, standing in armor, waiting for him to kill them. Something in him broke. The great bow slipped out of his hand. His skin began to burn. His mouth went dry and his legs would not hold him, and he was shaking all over. He sat down heavily in the chariot in the middle of the battlefield with his head in his hands. "I cannot do this," he said. "My whole body is trembling, my mind is spinning, and I cannot see clearly. I do not know what is right. If we win, what have we won? If we lose, what have we lost? Every path I look down ends in something terrible. I would rather sit here and be killed where I sit than move at all." Anyone who has ever been paralyzed by a decision knows exactly where Arjuna was sitting. Krishna did not tell him to be strong. He did not tell him to stop feeling what he was feeling. He turned around in the chariot and spoke to him quietly, and what he said became the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most beloved conversations ever written down. "You are grieving," Krishna said, "for things that do not need your grief, and look at what your mind is really doing. It is not here. It has run ahead to the end of the war and stood among the ruins and come back to tell you what it found. But the mind cannot go there because it has not happened yet." Arjuna lifted his head. "You have a right to your action," Krishna said. "You never have a right to the fruit of your action. Let the action be your concern and never the result. Do not let the fruit be your motive, and do not withdraw into doing nothing either. Do what is yours to do. Do it as well as it can be done, and then let go of the harvest. Perform your work standing steady, letting go of attachment, calm whether it succeeds or fails. That evenness of mind, Arjuna, is what yoga really means." And as he listened, the shaking in Arjuna's body began to settle. Not because the war had gone away. The war was still there, and it was still terrible. But he had been given back the only piece of it that was actually his. The next thing he had to do. He stood up. He picked up his bow. The lesson: almost all of the anxiety we carry about our work, our exams, our health, our children, and our futures is fruit anxiety. It is not fear of the doing. It is fear of the outcome. And the outcome is precisely the part that was never in our hands. Krishna's teaching is not a call to stop caring. It is a much more practical thing than that. It is a division of labor. The effort is yours. The result belongs to 1,000 causes you will never see, most of which were in motion long before you were born. When you try to control the harvest, you are trying to lift a weight that is not yours to lift, and that impossible weight is what you feel in your chest at 3 in the morning. A farmer plants a seed. He waters it. He watches the sky. He keeps the birds away. He does not dig the seed up every morning to check whether it is growing, because he knows that digging it up is not care. It is anxiety, and it kills the plant. So ask yourself, in whatever situation is frightening you right now, what is genuinely mine to do today? Then do that as carefully and honestly as you can. And when your mind runs ahead to the ruins at the end of the war, notice that it has gone somewhere that does not exist, and gently bring it back to the chariot, where the only real thing is the next small action in front of you. Story 5. Hanuman forgets his own strength. When Hanuman was a child, he was extraordinary, and he did not know how to be careful. One morning he woke hungry and saw the sun rising red over the horizon, and he thought it was a ripe fruit hanging in the sky. So he leapt for it. He leapt up out of the world toward the sun, and the sky itself had to be defended against a hungry child. He was struck down, and he survived. But the great sages, who could see how strong he was and how young, agreed that such power in someone who did not yet understand it was dangerous both for the world and for him. So they placed a gentle curse on him. He would keep all of his strength, but he would forget that he had it. He would only remember when someone else reminded him. And so, Hanuman grew up quiet. Many years later, an army had gathered on the southern shore of the sea. They had been searching for Sita, the stolen queen, and at last they knew where she was. She was in Lanka, across the water. The ocean stretched out in front of them. Endless, gray, impossible. Someone had to cross it. "How far can you leap?" the leaders asked, going along the line of warriors. One after another they answered honestly, and each answer fell short. 10 leagues, 20, 30. Some of them had been famous once and were old now, and they said, "I could have done it once, but not today." The young Prince Angada stood up and said, "I believe I could reach the other shore, but I do not think I would have the strength to come back." And then there was silence, and in that silence the whole mission began to die. They had found her, and they could not reach her, and it had all been for nothing. Off to one side, apart from the others, Hanuman was sitting on a rock. He had not offered anything. He had not spoken at all. He was listening to the great warriors measure themselves, and he was thinking, quite simply, that he was the least of them, and that whatever was needed, he did not have it. The old bear Jambavan, who was older than almost everything, turned and looked at him. "Hanuman," he said, "why are you sitting there saying nothing?" Hanuman looked up, surprised to be addressed, and Jambavan began to talk. He spoke loudly, so that everyone could hear. He told the whole shore who Hanuman's father was, and that his father was the wind. He told them about the morning the child had leapt at the sun. He listed the things Hanuman had already survived, the blessings that had been laid on him, the strength that had been in him since before he could speak. "You are not the least of us," Jambavan said. "You have simply forgotten. Stand up. Remember who you are." And as he listened, something happened to Hanuman. He stood, and as he stood, he began to grow. His shoulders widened, his chest lifted, and he grew until he stood above the trees, and the warriors below him fell back in astonishment. He was not being given anything. Nothing was being added to him. He was only remembering what had been there the whole time. He climbed the mountain at the shore. He filled his lungs with air, and he threw himself out over the ocean and crossed it in a single leap. The lesson. There is a specific kind of anxiety that sounds like this. I am not enough for what is being asked of me. Everyone else can do this and I cannot. Whatever the thing is, I do not have it. This story says something remarkable about that voice. It does not argue that you should feel more confident. It says that the strength is already in you, and the only thing that has happened is that you have forgotten it, because forgetting is what fear does to a person. Fear is a kind of amnesia. It wipes the record clean and presents you with a version of yourself who has never survived anything. So you must learn to be your own Jambavan. When the voice starts, answer it with evidence, out loud if you need to. Remember the thing 3 years ago that you were certain would destroy you and did not. Remember the conversation you dreaded having and had anyway. Remember the year you got through when you did not think you could. You are not being asked to become someone new by morning. You are being asked to remember someone you have already been. And notice one more thing, gently. Hanuman needed another voice to remind him. That was not weakness. It was simply how the curse worked. If you cannot remember your own strength today, that is not a failure. It may just mean it is time to let someone who loves you tell you who you are. Story 6. Ganesha circles. His parents. One day the sage Narada came to the mountain where Shiva and Parvati lived, and he brought with him a single fruit. It was said to be the fruit of wisdom, and it had a strange condition attached to it. It could not be cut or shared or divided in any way. Whoever ate it had to eat all of it. Shiva and Parvati had 2 sons. Kartikeya was tall and quick and beautiful, and he rode a peacock. Ganesha was small and round-bellied, with the head of an elephant, and his mount was a mouse. Both of them wanted the fruit. "Then we shall make it a contest," Shiva said. "Whichever of you can circle the whole world 3 times and return here first will win it." Kartikeya did not wait to hear another word. He ran to his peacock and sprang onto its back, and the great bird lifted into the air and was gone over the mountains in a few heartbeats. He flew like something thrown from a bow. He crossed the deserts and the rivers and the shining seas, and he flew hard because he could feel the fruit slipping away from him with every wing beat, and he did not once look back. Ganesha stood where he was. He looked at his mouse, who could not have carried him around a garden, let alone around the world. He looked at the sky where his brother had disappeared, and he thought about it for a while, in no particular hurry. Then he walked over to where his mother and father were sitting, and he walked around them, slowly, all the way around, once, then a second time, then a third. And when he had finished the 3rd circle, he stood in front of them and bowed and put out his hand for the fruit. Shiva raised an eyebrow. The task was to circle the world 3 times. "I have," said Ganesha. "You are my world. Everything the world contains, it contains because of you. Why would I run around the outside of it looking for what is standing right in front of me?" And they gave him the fruit. When Kartikeya came back at last, exhausted, his peacock's wings heavy, having crossed every ocean on earth, he found his brother sitting comfortably in the shade, eating. The lesson: most anxious people are not lazy. That is the part that is so unfair. Anxious people are usually the ones on the peacock, flying as hard as they possibly can, crossing ocean after ocean, certain that peace is somewhere out there and that they will reach it as soon as they arrive at the next thing. When the promotion comes, when the money is sorted, when the house is finished, when the weight is off, when this difficult season is behind me, then I will be able to rest. And every time you land, the finish line has quietly moved because it was never a place. Kartikeya's mistake was not that he was slow, he was magnificently fast. His mistake was that he accepted the shape of the race without asking what the race was actually for. Ganesha won by being willing to stop and to look at what he already had and to trust that it counted. Notice too that he did nothing dramatic. He did not sit in a cave for 12 years. He simply turned and walked slowly around the people he loved and gave that his full attention 3 times over. That is a very small thing, and it is available tonight. Look at the room you are actually in. Look at the people who are actually in your life. Put your hand on the animal sleeping next to you. You have been circling the globe for a fruit that is sitting on the table in your own house. Stop for a moment and turn around and give what is already here the attention you were saving for what comes next. Story 7. Narada and the Illusion. The Sage. Narada traveled between the worlds, and he knew a great deal. One day he was walking with Vishnu, and he asked him a question he had been carrying for a long time. "Tell me about Maya," Narada said. "Everyone speaks of it, the great illusion, the veil over the world. But I have studied for centuries and I do not think I understand it. Explain it to me." Vishnu smiled. "It is difficult to explain, but I am thirsty. Would you go and fetch me a little water, and then we can talk about it?" Narada bowed and set off toward the village at the edge of the plain. It was a hot day. He came to the first house and knocked at the door. A young woman opened it. Narada looked at her and forgot what he had come for. He asked her name. She smiled and asked his. Her father came to the door and invited him inside out of the sun, and there was food, and there was talking, and the afternoon slipped away. He stayed the night. He stayed the week, and within the year Narada had married her and had begun to build a life in that village. They had 3 children. He worked the land and grew crops and learned the moods of the weather. He built a house with his own hands and repaired the roof each year before the rains. His children grew tall and gave him trouble and made him laugh. He watched his wife's face change slowly over the years and loved it more as it changed. 12 years went by, and Narada was not a sage on a road anymore. He was a farmer with a family and a small piece of land, and he was happy. Then, one night at the end of a long summer, the rain came and did not stop. The river rose in the dark. It came up through the fields and into the village, and it came so fast that there was no time to gather anything. Narada took his wife's hand and picked up his youngest child and shouted for the others, and they ran out into the black water. The current took the children first. He lunged for them, and the water pulled them away into the dark, and they were gone. Then his wife's hand was torn out of his hand. He screamed her name and swallowed the river and went under and came up and could not find her and could not find anyone. He was carried a long way in the roaring dark, and at last he caught hold of a branch and held on and was thrown up onto a muddy bank. He lay there in the mud in the first gray light, and he wept as a man weeps who has lost everything he has. And then, very close to him, a familiar voice said gently, "My dear child, where is my water? I have been waiting for half an hour." The lesson: Narada had not lost anything. His children had never been born. There had been no river and no roof and no 12 years. In half an hour on a hot afternoon, his mind had built an entire life, loved it completely, and then destroyed it, and his body had grieved it as though every part of it had happened. If you have an anxious mind, you already know that this is not a fantasy story. It is a description of last Tuesday night. You lay in the dark, and something small happened, a strange look, a message not answered, a pain in your side, and within 20 minutes, you had lived through the diagnosis. The conversation, the job loss, the end of the relationship, the version of your life where it all came apart. Your heart raced, your hands went cold, your body wept in the mud on the riverbank, and none of it had happened. This is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you have a powerful imagination working without supervision. So the practice is not to fight the vision or argue with it, because you cannot out-argue a flood. The practice is to hear the voice at the end. Ask yourself very simply, what is actually happening right now, in this room, in this minute? Not what might happen, what is here, the chair holding you, the sound outside, the fact that at this exact moment you are safe and breathing and nothing is on fire. That question is Vishnu's voice. It is the reminder that you went out for a glass of water and only half an hour has passed and everything you thought you had lost is still exactly where you left it. Story 8. Indra and the Procession of Ants. After a great victory, Indra, the king of the gods, decided that his palace was not good enough. He summoned Vishvakarma, the divine architect, and told him to rebuild it. Vishvakarma worked wonders. He raised courtyards of crystal and towers of gold, gardens with pools that reflected the sky, halls so vast that clouds drifted through them, and when it was finished, he presented it proudly. Indra walked through it and said, "Yes, but it is too small. Add a lake here and a mountain range there, and the eastern wing must be twice this size." So Vishvakarma built more, and Indra asked for more, and this went on for a long time. Whatever was completed became, the moment it was completed, not enough. The architect grew exhausted and then desperate. He could see that the work would never end because there was nothing wrong with the palace. At last, in secret, he went to Vishnu and asked to be released from the task. Not long after, a boy came walking up the steps of Indra's palace. He was perhaps 10 years old, dressed simply, and there was something in his face that made the guards step aside without asking him anything. Indra, who was a courteous king, rose and welcomed him and asked what had brought him. "I have heard," said the boy, "about the palace you are building. I wanted to see it. They say no Indra has ever built one like it." Indra laughed. "No Indra? What do you mean no Indra? There is one Indra. I am he." The boy smiled, but he did not answer. And at that moment a line of ants came marching across the floor of the great hall. There were many of them, a long dark ribbon of ants crossing the polished stone, one behind another. Endless. The boy looked at them and laughed out loud. Indra felt something cold move through him. "Why are you laughing?" "Forgive me," the boy said. "It is only that I saw the ants." "What about the ants?" The boy said. "Every one of those ants was once an Indra. Each of them sat where you are sitting, in a palace like this one, king of the gods, certain that there had never been another. They rose by good deeds, and they fell again, and they rose and fell many times, and now they are crossing your floor. The line has no beginning that I can see, and it has no end." While Indra sat with that, an old hermit came into the hall, wild-haired, half-naked, with a strange circle on his chest where the hair had fallen out. Indra asked, out of politeness, about the mark. "Ah, that," said the hermit. "One hair falls from my chest each time an Indra dies. When all the hair is gone, my own life will end. Universes come and go like grains of sand. Why would anyone build for that?" And when Indra looked up again, the boy was gone, and the hermit was gone, and he was sitting alone in a vast, unfinished hall of gold. He sat there for a long time. Then he sent for Vishvakarma and told him, kindly, that the palace was finished. It was, he said, quite good enough as it was. The lesson. This story is usually told as a lesson about pride, but for an anxious mind, it does something even better than that. It gives you scale, and scale is a form of mercy. So much of what keeps us awake is enormous only because we are standing too close to it. The thing you said in the meeting, the message that came out wrong, the mistake at work that you have replayed 40 times tonight. In your mind, it fills the whole sky, and you are certain everyone will remember it forever. Step back far enough and you can see the line of ants crossing the floor, and it becomes very hard to believe that the universe is keeping the record you think it is keeping. This is not despair, and it is not being told that you do not matter. Notice that Indra was not punished. Nothing was taken from him. He simply stopped needing the palace to be bigger, and in that moment, a burden he had been carrying for years fell off him, and he could rest. Cosmic perspective feels frightening from the outside and feels like relief from the inside. If nothing you do will echo through eternity, then nothing you get wrong will either. You are free to do your work, love the people in front of you, make your ordinary mistakes, and let the vast turning of things carry on without needing your supervision. The palace is already good enough. It always was. Story 9. Nachiketa at the Door of Death. There was once a man who decided to perform a great sacrifice. To do it properly, he was required to give away everything he owned. But when the day came, he found he could not part with anything of value, so he gave away the things he no longer wanted. He gave away his old cows, the ones that had stopped giving milk, the ones too weak to graze or bear calves. His young son Nachiketa watched this from the edge of the courtyard, and it troubled him. He understood, with the clear eyes of a child, that a gift which costs nothing is not a gift. So he went to his father and asked, quietly and without insolence, "Father, and to whom will you give me?" His father ignored him. The boy asked again, and at last his father, humiliated in front of everyone and stung to anger, turned on him and said, "To death! I give you to death!" The words fell into the courtyard and everything went quiet. His father regretted it immediately. But Nachiketa did a strange and dignified thing. He decided to honor it. He said goodbye, and he walked out of his father's house, and he went to the house of Yama, the Lord of Death. When he arrived, Yama was not at home, so the boy sat down at the threshold and waited. He waited one day. Nobody came. He was offered no water and no food and no place to sleep, because there was no one there to offer it. He waited a second day and a third. He did not shout at the door. He did not turn back. He did not fill the silence with panic. He simply sat at the door of death and waited and let the time pass through him. On the third night, Yama came home. He saw the boy on his doorstep and was deeply ashamed. A guest had waited 3 days at his door unfed. "Forgive me," he said. "You have waited 3 nights in my house. For each night, ask me for a boon, and I will grant it." Nachiketa thought. "For the first," he said, "let my father's anger be gone. Let him be at peace, and when I return, let him know me and greet me gladly. It is done. For the second, teach me the fire that leads to the heavens. I have heard it exists, and no one will explain it to me." Yama taught him and was impressed by how quickly he learned and named the teaching after him. And the third? The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When a person dies, some say that something remains, and some say nothing remains. Nobody agrees. You are death. You know. Tell me the truth about this, because I would rather know this than know anything else." Yama's face changed. "Ask me for something else," he said. "Even the gods have argued about that question. It is subtle and it is hard. Ask me instead for gold. Ask me for horses and elephants, for a kingdom that stretches to the sea, for 100 years of life, for sons and grandsons, for beautiful things and long pleasures. Name whatever you want and it is yours. Only do not ask me this." And the boy, who was hungry and small and had been sitting on a stone step for 3 days, answered him. "These pleasures wear out the senses that enjoy them," he said. "Even the longest life is short. Keep your horses and your dancing and your gold. What use is wealth to me if I have seen you? I will ask for nothing else." Then Yama looked at him properly and said, "You have chosen the path of what is good over the path of what is pleasant. Few do. I will teach you." And he taught him. "The self," he said, "is not born and does not die. It did not come from anywhere, and it is not going anywhere. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. It is smaller than the smallest thing and vaster than the vastest, and it is seated in the heart of every living creature. Think of the body as a chariot, and the senses as the horses, and the mind as the reins, and let the intellect be the charioteer, and know that the one riding in the chariot is you and is untouched by the road. The one who understands this," said Death, "does not grieve." The lesson: there are 2 gifts hidden in this story for an anxious person, and the first one is the 3 days on the doorstep. Nachiketa's great act was not courage in a dramatic sense. It was his ability to sit in not knowing without falling apart. Anxiety hates the waiting room. It hates the days between the test and the result, between the interview and the call. between the message you sent and the reply that has not come. And what it always tries to do is fill that emptiness with imagined disaster, because the mind would rather have a terrible answer than no answer at all. The boy shows another way. You can sit at the door. You can let the time be empty. It is uncomfortable and it will not kill you. And quite often, the door does open. The second gift is what he refused. Yama offered him every distraction in existence, and everyone was tempting. And the boy said no, because he understood that he was being offered them instead of the truth. We do the same thing on a smaller scale every evening. When something frightening sits underneath our days, we hand ourselves entertainment and food and endless scrolling so we do not have to look at it. And then we wonder why the fear is still there in the morning. Sometimes the most calming thing a person can do is to stop bargaining and sit down quietly with the question they have been running from and discover that it is not nearly as monstrous as the running was. Story 10. Dhruva, the Unmoving Star. There was a king with 2 wives, and he loved one of them far more than the other. The queen he loved less was named Suniti, and she had a small son named Dhruva, who was 5 years old. One afternoon, the boy came into the great hall and saw his father sitting on the throne with his other son on his knee. Dhruva did the natural thing that any 5-year-old would do. He walked over and began to climb up onto his father's lap. The other queen stopped him. "Not there," she said. "That place is not for you. You were not born from me, and it is only children born from me who may sit on the king's lap. If you want to sit there, you will have to go and pray to be born again as my son. Perhaps then." Dhruva looked at his father, and his father, who loved him, said nothing at all. He was afraid of his wife, and he stayed silent, and the silence went on a moment too long, and then it was too late. The boy went to his mother and cried until he could not breathe. And Suniti held him, and she did not lie to him. She did not tell him it had not happened. "I cannot give you the throne," she said. "I have no power in this house. But listen to me. There is something that no one can take from you, and no one can refuse you. Go and look for that." So the boy walked out of the palace and into the forest to look for something that could not be taken away. He was 5 years old. On the road, he met the sage Narada, who was astonished by him and tried kindly to send him home. "The forest is no place for a child. There are wild animals. You are too young for this, and what you are asking for is difficult even for old men who have given their whole lives to it. Go back to your mother." "I will not go back," said Dhruva. So Narada gave him a name to hold in his mind and taught him how to sit and left him there. And the child sat down under a tree and began. He sat for weeks and then for months. He sat through the heat and through the rains. He grew thin and did not notice. He was frightened by things in the dark and stayed where he was. Storms came and beasts came and strange, terrifying shapes came to break his concentration, and he did not move. His breathing grew slower and quieter until it almost stopped, and the whole forest around him became still, as though the world itself had leaned in to listen. And then the light came, and Vishnu was standing in front of him. "You have held on with all your heart," Vishnu said. "Ask me for what you came for." And the boy opened his mouth to ask for the throne, and found that he could not remember why he had ever wanted it. He stood there in the forest, thin and quiet and no longer really a child, and he understood that he had gone looking for a place to sit that nobody could take from him, and that he had found it, and that it was not in the palace and never had been. It was inside him, and it had been there while the storms came and while he was hungry and while he was afraid. Vishnu gave him a kingdom anyway, and he ruled it well and gently for many years. But that was not the real gift. The real gift is in the sky. On any clear night, look north, and you will find one star that does not move. Every other star in the heavens wheels slowly around it all night long, the whole turning sky pivoting on that one point, and that point stays exactly where it is. That is Dhruva. In India, his name is still the word for the pole star, and the word simply means the one that is fixed, the one that does not move. The lesson. Notice how this story begins. It begins with an ordinary injury, the kind that happens in ordinary families. A child was humiliated, and the person who should have protected him said nothing. That was the wound, and the wound is what sent him out of the house looking. Many of us are also out here looking because of something that happened when we were small, and there is no shame in that. But look at what he actually found. He went out to get a seat that no one could refuse him, and what he came back with was steadiness. Not victory, not an apology, steadiness. And that is the last and quietest thing these 10 stories have to say to you. There is a point in you that does not move. When the storms come, and they will come, the answer is not to stop the sky from turning, because you have never once managed that, and you never will. Thoughts will keep arriving. Feelings will keep wheeling around you all night long. The answer is to find the pole. It is the part of you that notices the storm. It is the golden bird, and the throat that holds the poison, and the breath going in and out while everything else changes. It has been there through every difficult year of your life, and it is here now, underneath the noise, perfectly still, waiting for you to remember it. That is the last of the 10 stories. Nothing about your life has changed in the last hour. The same things are waiting for you tomorrow. But perhaps something in you has loosened a little, and perhaps you are breathing more slowly than you were when we began. Take one of these with you. Just one. The empty branch above your head, the eye of the bird, the glass of water you went out for, the still point in the north. Thank you for spending this time here. If these stories brought you some quiet, consider liking and subscribing so that more of them can find you when you need them. Until next time, may your mind be still and may you rest well.